I know many of you have been waiting for this episode because I promised to unveil ACI REST resource. And we all believe that ACI REST is kind of a magic wand that will help us to create ACI objects that are not yet supported by the provider. But it comes with a big disadvantage. And watch till the end and you will understand what I'm talking about. Also, thanks for your feedbacks and suggestions on the agenda. As they say in the biggest cloud provider, our agenda is 95% driven by customers' feedback. So it is for this channel. ACI REST was high on the wish list. You wanted it, you got it. A quick refresher before we go into the topic of today's lesson. So we have already built the L3 out, we have already built the tenant, we have all that structure that we have on this diagram. So in L3 out we have created the L3 out itself, we have created the node profile and interface profile and external EPG. We haven't yet created the interface, so our interface profile sits unpopulated. So if I zoom in, you see we can create an interface under the interface profile, and this interface can be of three types. It can be routed interface, it can be routed sub interface, or it can be an SVI. In most deployments, I see people use the routed sub interface. This is quite logical because when you create the SVI, you inevitably deal with the L2 port stretching from the external peer. So you have to deal with BPDUs and STP, and we want to avoid that. However, there are some times when use cases where we need to use the SVI and we want to create the SVI. So today I will show you how to create the SVI. And for the SVI, we'll use the ACI REST module. So to be fair, I should say that for all interfaces, routed interface, routed sub interface, and SVI, for all of them, there is no Terraform dedicated resource to create them. So to create any of them, you will have to use the ACI REST resource. And the ACI REST resource is a general resource that allows us to put any object in the ACI management tree. I will show you how it works, but for now, let me show that we still have our tenant from a previous lesson. We still have our L3 out. Oh, we don't have it. So we have to deploy it then. So we do Terraform init, and we do Terraform apply auto approve. So now we have our tenant. Let's refresh. And in this tenant, we have two L3 outs. So for one of these L3 outs, we're going to be creating the SVI. But before we get into the topic of creating an SVI, I have a plan here. So it says we need to fix configuration drift. What is configuration drift? We have 29 resources created. So we have our tenant, we have all the objects. However, if I do now Terraform plan, you see that the Terraform wants to change some object. And this object is the L3 out number 2. So this is the L3 out. If we go back to our picture, this is the L3 out that connects back to a bridge domain. And this is done in order to let the subnet be announced out of the L3 out. So we connect L3 out to the bridge domain, and we do this under the bridge domain configuration. So if we go to our main TF file, and if we look at the bridge domain configuration, you will see that it has relation to the L3 out, global L3 out number 2. Okay. So what does Terraform wants here? So it says that under this L3 out number 2, you have an attribute which is relation to BD public subnet holder that it wants to delete. Why does it want to delete it? if we go to our module L3 out and check the configuration for the L3 out itself, we have that it does not have this attribute. So by the logic, we should have here something like this, saying that this is connected to a bridge domain, right? But we cannot actually configure like this, because when we create a bridge domain, we say it depends on the module L3 out, because we are connecting our bridge domain to the L3 out, and L3 out should exist in order to be connected. So if here we say that the L3 out before it's created needs to be dependent on the bridge domain, that's not going to work. It's chicken and egg problem. So another way of fixing this configuration drift, and why is it called configuration drift? Because ACI under the hood, when you create a bridge domain and when you connect it to the L3 out, it goes also under the L3 out and it adds this connection. So if we go to L3 out 2, you see here it says it's referenced in the bridge domain. So under the hood, ACI goes and creates this relation to public subnet holder under the L3 out, and Terraform does not expect it. So this is configuration drift. When your configuration, your actual configuration of ACI is different from what Terraform thinks is the actual configuration. Okay? So that's why Terraform doesn't know anything about this attribute. It doesn't know that the ACI under the hood has configured this, so it wants to remove it. How do we fix this drift? We can say lifecycle. Here we say lifecycle ignore changes, and we simply ignore any changes that ACI under the hood does to this attribute. And we don't really care, because ACI, this is something that ACI will take care by itself. If we remove the association BD to L3 out, that will also get changed. We don't need Terraform to take care of this. So let's take a look now. If we do Terraform plan, we should see that the configuration drift is not there anymore. Infrastructure is up to date. So this is important to keep your configuration free of any drifts. And once we have it, we can actually now focus on the L3 out itself and on the SVI. So I told you that we will need the ACI REST resource in order to create the SVI. So let's go to documentation and let's check ACI REST. ACI REST. ACI REST is a way to put any object in the ACI tree, and in order to put any object, you need to know three things. You need to know the place in the tree where you want to put this object. You need to know the name or the class of the object that you want to put, and you also need to name the attributes of the object, the key and value. So for example, the key can be address and the value can be the IP address itself. You will see it in the example. So let's copy this example from the official guide, and let's post it in our configuration. We want to create an SVI, and if we go back to the plan, it says create an SVI in the main TF file. Why here? I could have also created it under the L3 out module, but I want just one L3 out, and the module, it runs twice, and I want just one L3 out connected to any of the L3 outs. So I will do it here in the main TF file. So ACI REST, this is the resource. Let's give it a local name. REST local name, and then I need, as you can see, I need three things. As I mentioned, I need a path, which is the place in the tree. I need a class name, which is the name of the object we want to create, and we need the content. So here we need the attributes. So how do I know all this? Where do I get this information? Easiest way to actually understand what you need to put under the ACI REST configuration is to create the object first in the UI and inspect it. So let's say that under the L3 out, under the node profile, under the interface profile, we want to create an SVI. Let's create it in the UI first. Let's say that the node should be 111, port 1/1, the VLAN should be 100, and the IP address so let's create this one. Then what you can do, you can open this object in the store browser. So we open it in the store browser. And we got plenty of information here. So first thing we need to know is the place in the tree where we need to put our object. So this is the place. The place is the DN, distinguished name. And the place includes everything. So it says under tenant vanilla, under global L3 out number 1, under the node profile X, interface profile Z. And also here we include the node and the port. So this is the place in the tree where we want to put our object, number 1. Second thing is the name of the object or the class. So this is the class. And then we have attributes. We have address, which is 192.168, blah, blah, blah. We have encapsulation for the VLAN. We also have to mention what type of interface is that. In our case, it's SVI. And it also can be router interface. It also can be routed sub interface. So this is the place where you get all this information that you need to configure under the ACI REST module, not module, resource. So be careful to copy paste the DN. You need to paste it in the middle. So under you have this API/node/mo. So here what you need to put, you copy this DN and you paste it here. And don't forget the JSON in the end. And let's change it a little bit. Let's say that we want to create this object. We want to create the SVI under global L3 out number 1. But let's, for example, change the node. Let's say it's 112. And the path should be 1/2, for example. Then the class name. Class name is this one. So we just copy from here and paste here. And then the number of attributes. So for sure we need the address, which equals something. Then we also need encapsulation. Here don't forget this VLAN keyword because it can be also VXLAN. And we also need to say that this is the SVI. Ext SVI, like this. And one important thing as well, so this SVI is only, so it's created under the L3 out, node profile, and interface profile. So this one, it should depends on module L3 out. Okay, so let's now just go under in the UI and delete something that we have created just for testing, for getting all this information about the DN, class name, so on. And let's observe now that SVI is being created here by Terraform. So let's do Terraform plan first. So as we can see, it plans to add this type of object to this path with all the attributes that we configured. So let's apply. That's it. Here we have our SVI. So not that difficult. Remember, the golden rule is if you want to create some object first, create it in the UI, inspect how it's being created, inspect all the attributes, and then just map this to your code in Terraform. One last thing, by the way, now there's going to be another configuration drift. If we do Terraform plan, you see it also wants to change now global L3 out number 1 logical interface profile. Under that interface profile, it wants to delete the relation to the L3 out. So what happens again? When we have created the SVI with the ACI REST resource, it also, the system, the ACI, the system itself in the background, it went and updated this interface profile. So it added some specific attribute to tell it, okay, now you have this SVI associated with you. So this is done under the hood and Terraform doesn't know about this. So it wants to delete this attribute, but we want to keep it. So we do the same thing as we did with the, to defeat the previous configuration drift. So under the interface profile here, we say that we want to ignore, again, ignore changes to some attribute, and we can copy paste it from here. So ignore changes to this attribute. Let's check if that did the trick. Yeah, that worked. So configuration drift is removed. Last thing that I want to show you is the behavior of Terraform in relation to the resources created with the ACI REST. So look, does Terraform know that we have created this SVI? Yes, it does. How to check this? We do Terraform show. So this is the list of objects, and we actually need to track exact object. So we use a grep ACI REST. So we have it, and let's say we want to grab also 10 lines after. So Terraform knows that we have this ACI REST resource and all the attributes, everything. Now let me show you what happens when we go to ACI. Let's go to L3 out number 2, for example. It has the node profile and it also has the interface profile. So let's delete this interface profile. So there's gonna be configuration drift because the ACI configuration is different from Terraform configuration. So what happens in this case? Let's do Terraform plan. So Terraform goes to ACI, does the poll, so it checks if all the objects are in place, and it detects that one object has been deleted manually. So what it wants to do, it wants again to add this logical interface profile. Yeah, logical, just to remove the drift, right? So if we do Terraform apply auto approve, you will see that again, the interface profile will be created back. However, if we go back to our SVI that we have just created with Terraform, and if we remove it manually, let's see if Terraform can detect this. No. So this is one really annoying shortcoming of ACI REST resource. is that if you use it with Terraform, Terraform doesn't have any way to keep track on what you have deployed with this ACI REST resource. So if something was deleted like this manually from the UI, Terraform will not detect this, that this object is missing. So let's do destroy, Terraform destroy, destroying everything, and let's again Terraform apply. Let's do apply again. So that's the only way how you can actually recreate the whole structure, including that SVI that we had previously created. Let's see if it's in place. Networking, L3 out, L3 out 1, logical node profile, logical interface profile, and here should be our SVI. Yes. That's it. That is something that I wanted to show you today. Quick summary. Number 1. Use ACI REST to create objects that are not yet supported by the Terraform provider. Number 2. Remember the disadvantage. Terraform cannot keep track and maintain objects created by ACI REST. And number 3. I forgot the number 3. I'll catch you in the next one. Number 3 was about configuration drifts. So configuration drifts are hard to spot, hard to troubleshoot, but it's absolutely necessary to get rid of any configuration drifts in the healthy automation environment. Now I'll catch you in the next one.